Prince William has ordered for an FBI investigation on Meghan Markle after rumors of her possessing some classified documents taken from Prince Andrew to be sold to the Chinese. Welcome viewers to my channel. Please subscribe, like my video and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. Every scandal begins somewhere, often as a whisper, a fleeting comment overheard in a crowded room, or an anonymous tip that seems too small to matter. In the case of Meghan Markle and the alleged classified documents, the first signs of trouble were subtle, almost imperceptible. It started with the quiet circulation of speculation among palace insiders, casual mentions in conversation, a note passed along to a journalist, a fleeting reference in a tabloid article that would normally be dismissed as gossip. But whispers have a way of growing, like embers fanned by the wind, until they ignite into flames that are impossible to ignore. And this was precisely what began to happen. The rumors were as contradictory as they were sensational. Some claimed that Meghan had been seen carrying documents of immense sensitivity, others suggested that the material had been in her possession for months, perhaps even longer. Names were dropped, locations hinted at, and slowly, a picture began to emerge, one that was as alarming as it was difficult to verify. In a world where appearances are everything, even the slightest suggestion of impropriety could create a ripple of consequences. By the time the whispers reached senior palace aides, it was clear that this was no ordinary rumor, the stakes were unusually high, and the potential fallout could be devastating. It was around this time that journalists began to notice patterns in the stories circulating online and in print. Social media posts, anonymous tips to tabloid outlets, and a few unusually candid comments from former staffers hinted at something more than mere exaggeration. Some reports suggested that Meghan had somehow gained access to documents originally tied to Prince Andrew, documents that were never intended to leave secure environments. The implications were staggering. The British monarchy had always operated under strict codes of secrecy, especially regarding sensitive financial and diplomatic information. If these reports were true, the breach was unprecedented. And yet, as is often the case in high-profile scandals, fact and fiction were dangerously intertwined, creating a fog of uncertainty that was impossible to navigate with certainty. Within the palace, the mood shifted almost imperceptibly but decisively. Advisors, aides, and even members of the family began to discuss the rumors with an intensity that suggested a growing sense of unease. Security experts were consulted, media analysts briefed, and legal teams quietly instructed to monitor the situation. Every phone call, every meeting, and every note exchanged carried an undertone of urgency. The problem, of course, was that nobody could be entirely sure what was real and what was fabrication. The rumors themselves became a force, shaping perceptions and influencing decisions even before confirmation, or denial, was possible. It is important to understand the human dynamics at play during this phase. For Prince William, the initial whispers were more than just troubling, they were deeply personal. This was not a distant colleague or a political adversary. This was his sister-in-law, a woman he had seen as part of the family, a mother to his niece and nephew, and a figure he had hoped would contribute positively to the royal image. To hear that someone so close could be involved, even indirectly, in a situation involving sensitive documents was shocking. It forced a reckoning with questions that few could imagine facing. How do you confront the possibility of a breach of trust within your own family? How do you balance emotion, loyalty, and the responsibility to protect an institution larger than yourself? The rumors did not remain contained within palace walls for long. As is often the case in high-profile situations, information leaks to the public with alarming speed. Social media amplified every claim, every hint, and every speculative thread. Headlines appeared overnight, some sensational, some cautious, but all feeding into a growing narrative of intrigue. Ordinary citizens became part of the conversation, reacting, speculating, and sharing their opinions. In the digital age, no story, no matter how delicate or uncertain, remains private for long. The pressure on the palace, and on Meghan herself, was immediate and relentless. What made these rumors particularly combustible was the context in which they arose. Prince Andrew had already been embroiled in scandal, his reputation tarnished by legal battles, public scrutiny, and accusations that had dominated the media for years. Any documents associated with him were automatically viewed as sensitive, potentially explosive, and capable of affecting not only his personal standing but the monarchy's credibility. To suggest that such material might be in Meghan's possession whether intentionally or accidentally, was enough to ignite fear, speculation, and intense curiosity across the globe. For William, this meant that inaction was not an option. The possibility that private family matters could become international crises was real, and every step had to be measured with precision. During these early days of rumor circulation, palace aides began documenting every detail, tracking the sources of leaks, and analyzing the potential motives behind them. Was someone attempting to undermine Meghan? Was this a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by the media? Or was there a deeper truth that had yet to be uncovered? These questions created an atmosphere of heightened vigilance, and even the smallest detail, a phone call, a misplaced document, or a cryptic remark, was scrutinized for meaning. The palace had to act not only to protect sensitive information but also to ensure that their responses did not escalate the situation further. At the same time, Meghan Markle's position became increasingly precarious. Known for her poise under pressure, she faced a situation unlike anything she had encountered before. Every public appearance, every social media post, and even casual interactions with friends or colleagues risked being interpreted through the lens of the rumor. The psychological weight of such scrutiny cannot be overstated. Being accused, indirectly or otherwise, of handling classified documents while simultaneously being under the watchful eye of both the media and her own family is an unprecedented situation that requires careful navigation. Fear, frustration, and the desire to protect oneself naturally become dominant emotions, yet in the royal sphere, every action has consequences far beyond the individual. Rumors, as we know, have a peculiar power. They exist in a space between reality and imagination, often carrying more weight than facts precisely because they invite interpretation and speculation. In this case, the rumors were fueled by multiple factors: prior scandals, existing tensions within the family, media sensationalism, and the natural human fascination with secrecy and betrayal. Each of these elements acted as a catalyst, intensifying the drama and setting the stage for what would become a global narrative. Observers could not help but speculate. Could Meghan Markle, already a polarizing figure, have crossed a line? Could documents that were never meant to leave secure channels now be at risk of exploitation? And most importantly, what would be the consequences for the royal family if these rumors were true? By the time the rumors had fully taken hold in public consciousness, they were no longer whispers, they had become a story with momentum, a narrative that demanded action. Prince William, understanding the potential severity of the situation, had to weigh the evidence, assess the risks, and determine a course of action that would protect both the monarchy and the public trust. It was a delicate balance, requiring him to act decisively while minimizing damage to personal relationships and public perception. The stage was set for a dramatic escalation, one that would draw in international authorities, legal teams, and intelligence agencies. The early days of rumor circulation also highlighted the modern challenges of information management. In the digital era, misinformation spreads faster than truth. Social media platforms amplify every claim, while news outlets, eager for readership, often present speculation alongside fact. Within this environment, distinguishing between what is real and what is false becomes increasingly difficult. For the royal family, this meant that each rumor, no matter how unverified, had to be addressed or managed carefully. Silence could be interpreted as guilt, and overreaction could create further suspicion. Navigating this terrain required extraordinary tact, patience, and strategic thinking. Amidst the tension, the human element remained central. The rumors were not abstract concepts, they involved real people, with real emotions, navigating an incredibly high-pressure situation. Prince William felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him, while Meghan Markle faced the challenge of defending her reputation in an environment where perception often mattered more than reality. Advisors, aides, and legal teams became essential intermediaries, tasked with managing both the facts and the emotional responses of everyone involved. Every decision, from whether to issue statements to how to handle sensitive communications, carried significant consequences. As the rumors grew, the world watched with fascination. Analysts, commentators, and ordinary citizens alike speculated on the possible outcomes, the motives involved, and the potential consequences. What began as a whisper within palace corridors had now become a global conversation, one that intertwined family loyalty, public perception, and national security in a way that few could have predicted. The rumor's initial spark had ignited a chain reaction, setting the stage for a dramatic investigation, intense media scrutiny, and an emotional rollercoaster for everyone involved. And yet, even as the public clamored for answers, the truth remained elusive. Was Meghan Markle truly in possession of sensitive documents, or was this a misunderstanding magnified by speculation and fear? How would Prince William respond, balancing familial loyalty with the imperative to protect the monarchy? These questions, unanswered and fraught with emotional weight, created a tension that would define the next chapters of this story. The rumor had taken root, and the consequences of its spread were only beginning to be felt. The moment the rumors fully reached Prince William, the impact was immediate and profound. For a man who has spent his entire life balancing the weight of public expectation with the demands of personal responsibility, this situation was unlike anything he had faced before. He had dealt with scandals, media scrutiny, and public speculation over the years, but the idea that someone so intimately connected to his family might be involved in a potential breach of sensitive information struck at the very core of his sense of duty. It was not just a matter of security, it was a question of trust, loyalty, and the fundamental integrity of the family he was poised to lead. William's initial reaction was one of disbelief. He had known Meghan Markle as a part of the family, seen her in public and private moments, and believed in the commitments she had made to both his brother and the institution they represented. To hear that she could be tied to documents of significant sensitivity, documents that, if mishandled, could have far-reaching implications for the monarchy and potentially for international relations, was a shock that he could hardly process. For a man whose life is carefully orchestrated around order, protocol, and discretion, this was chaos incarnate. In the quiet of his private study, William reflected on the gravity of the situation. The allegations were severe that Meghan, whether intentionally or inadvertently, possessed documents originating from Prince Andrew, documents that should have remained strictly confidential. The potential for international fallout was real, with speculation suggesting that these documents could find their way into the hands of foreign powers, including China. The implications were staggering. One misstep, one lapse in judgment, could not only damage personal relationships but also shake the very foundation of the monarchy, eroding public trust and creating diplomatic tension at the highest levels. Advisors quickly began briefing William on the situation. Security experts outlined the potential scenarios, explaining how documents of this nature could be used for leverage or influence. Legal teams assessed the potential consequences, both domestic and international, for any perceived mishandling of sensitive material. Every detail mattered. In these early briefings, William was confronted with a dual reality: the personal betrayal suggested by the rumors and the professional crisis posed by the possibility of a security breach. Both were serious, and both demanded immediate attention. The emotional weight of the situation was immense. William is known for his composure in public, often presenting a calm and collected demeanor even in moments of high pressure. Privately, however, he struggled with a profound sense of betrayal. This was not merely a scandal to be managed, it was a personal crisis that forced him to reevaluate his understanding of loyalty and trust within his own family. How could someone so close be involved, even indirectly, in a situation that threatened both the monarchy and national security? The question haunted him, and the answers were not readily apparent. In the midst of this turmoil, William began to consider the necessary steps to protect both the monarchy and the public. It was clear that discretion alone would not suffice. The rumors were spreading too quickly, the potential consequences too severe. Action was required, but it had to be measured, calculated, and legally sound. In consultation with trusted advisors, William made the unprecedented decision to involve the FBI, an agency with the experience, reach, and authority to investigate matters that crossed international boundaries. The decision was not taken lightly. Involving a foreign law enforcement agency in a family matter, particularly one with such sensitive political and diplomatic implications, was extraordinary. Yet, the potential risks of inaction were far greater. As plans for the investigation were put into motion, William had to navigate the delicate balance between public perception and private reality. Any misstep could be interpreted as overreach, mistrust, or even a personal vendetta. At the same time, failing to act decisively could leave the monarchy vulnerable to scandal, criticism, and loss of credibility. Each decision, each communication, each move was scrutinized not only by those in the palace but also by the media and the public. The pressure was immense, the stakes unprecedented. William's shock was compounded by the knowledge that the world was watching. Unlike previous scandals, this one involved multiple layers of complexity: family loyalty, public perception, media scrutiny, international law, and the potential for diplomatic tension. The situation was unique in its scope, unprecedented in its implications, and emotionally overwhelming in its personal dimension. Every conversation, every meeting, every strategic decision carried with it the weight of potential consequences. In private, William wrestled with a torrent of conflicting emotions. Anger, fear, disappointment, and responsibility all collided within him. He had to maintain a sense of composure and authority, yet privately he grappled with the reality that someone he had trusted could be implicated in a situation with far-reaching implications. This internal conflict was mirrored in the broader palace environment, where aides and advisors worked tirelessly to assess, manage, and mitigate the situation. Every report, every update, every assessment was a piece of a complex puzzle that had to be carefully navigated to prevent escalation and preserve both family integrity and institutional credibility. At the same time, the rumors themselves began to take on a life of their own. Media outlets, fueled by anonymous sources and speculative commentary, began to present the story in increasingly dramatic terms. Headlines suggested intrigue, betrayal, and scandal, each iteration amplifying the sense of urgency and crisis. For William, this meant that every step he took had to account for both the factual reality and the public perception. Silence could be interpreted as guilt, action could be seen as overreach, and miscommunication could exacerbate an already volatile situation. The emotional pressure was immense, and the need for careful, deliberate decision-making was paramount. As the shock set in, William began to consider the broader implications of the situation. This was no longer merely a family issue, it was a story with national and international consequences. The involvement of the FBI signaled the seriousness of the allegations, but it also introduced additional layers of complexity. Coordination between British security, legal advisors, and an American law enforcement agency had to be precise, measured, and legally sound. Any misstep could result in public embarrassment, diplomatic tension, or even legal complications. The magnitude of the situation became increasingly clear, reinforcing the urgency of decisive, strategic action. In private moments, William reflected on the personal dimension of the shock. Trust, once questioned, is difficult to restore. Loyalty, once doubted, can be fragile. The personal relationships within the family were under unprecedented strain. Every interaction, every conversation, every decision was infused with the knowledge that the rumors, whether true or exaggerated, had already begun to erode the sense of stability and certainty that had long defined his role within the monarchy. This emotional burden, carried alongside the practical responsibilities of leadership, created a tension that was both personal and professional, intimate and public. The shock also brought with it a sense of urgency. Time was a factor, as every passing day allowed rumors to solidify in the public imagination. Action was required, but it had to be decisive, discreet, and legally justified. William knew that any delay could be interpreted as weakness or indecision, while any miscalculation could have serious consequences for both the family and the monarchy. The weight of this responsibility, combined with the personal sense of betrayal, created a pressure unlike anything he had faced before. Ultimately, William's response was defined by a combination of duty, strategy, and emotional resolve. The shock, while profound, was channeled into action, careful, calculated, and designed to protect the monarchy, the family, and the institution itself. The decision to involve the FBI was a reflection of the seriousness with which he viewed the allegations, the potential risks of inaction, and the need to navigate an unprecedented situation with precision, discretion, and courage. It was a response shaped not by emotion alone, but by an understanding of the stakes, the consequences, and the moral imperative to act responsibly in the face of uncertainty. As the initial shock subsided into determined action, the stage was set for a series of developments that would expand the story beyond family and palace walls. The FBI investigation would bring new scrutiny, new revelations, and new challenges, all while intensifying the emotional, psychological, and public pressure on every individual involved. William's shock, transformed into focused action, became the catalyst for a narrative that combined family loyalty, institutional responsibility, and global intrigue, a story whose consequences would resonate far beyond the walls of Buckingham Palace. The decision to involve the FBI was unprecedented. For centuries, the British monarchy had maintained a careful balance between secrecy, discretion, and public accountability. Internal matters, even the most sensitive, were handled quietly, within palace walls or through domestic legal channels. But the rumors surrounding Meghan Markle and the alleged possession of documents connected to Prince Andrew transcended ordinary protocols. The potential for national security implications, coupled with the fear of international exposure, demanded a response that was extraordinary in scope and meticulous in execution. Prince William's shock had transformed into action, and now, a formal investigation was set in motion, one that would reach across continents and into the heart of one of the most controversial stories in recent royal history. From the beginning, the decision was fraught with complexity. Involving an American federal agency in matters concerning a British royal was not a simple matter of protocol. It carried diplomatic, legal, and public relations risks. The FBI, tasked with handling sensitive national security and criminal matters in the United States, had to tread carefully, understanding that they were dealing with figures of immense international significance. For William, the choice was clear. If there was any possibility that sensitive documents had been compromised, there could be no delay, no hesitation. Speed, discretion, and accuracy were paramount. Preparations for the investigation began quietly. Advisors coordinated with legal teams to define the scope and parameters of the inquiry. Any involvement of the FBI had to be carefully framed. The agency's authority would extend only to the verification of facts that intersected with American law, while ensuring that the investigation respected both diplomatic protocols and the delicate nature of familial relationships. Communications were carefully scripted, channels of contact secured, and contingencies meticulously planned. Every step required attention to detail, precision, and the recognition that any